Wow. Didn't think I'd hit my first goal that fast. Welcome, my fellow wannabes. Welcome to my channel. I'm Gabriel Fast. I am the wannabe critic. So I'm making this video today because of you. I set out in September to start a YouTube channel, and I thought to myself, you know what? I was kind of down on myself, and I had done this really cool thing over the summer. It took up a lot of my time, and I was giving music lessons, and I really enjoyed that. And it just so happened that lots of other people were busy during the summer, and my lessons just didn't work out. And then after this thing was over, whenever school got back started, I lost all of my music lessons. So I was pretty depressed because I really enjoyed doing that. And then it just hit me, I know somebody who has started a YouTube channel, and they're successful, so why can't I do the same thing? It had always been something that I really wanted to do, so why not try it out? Why not just, see if I can do it and see if I can be any good at it, I run a podcast. Why can't I start a YouTube channel and try and make something out of it? So I decided to. And I set a reasonable goal for myself. I said, you know what, by September of 2020, I want to have 100 subscribers. 4 months later, we hit that now. And I'm just very grateful that you who are watching this are a part of that. And thank you for believing in me, and thank you for commenting and giving back and, making me better at this, because it's something that I feel really good about doing, and I really enjoy it. So thank you for being a part of this, and I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say always. I will try and always communicate with you and hear your feedback, and if you have suggestions for things, I'm definitely always listening and taking things into consideration. I do have a lot of ideas myself, so I may not always get to an idea that you want me to do, but I'm all about collaboration, and I think me and Emma is very grateful too. Me and Emma doing things together is definitely probably more of what this channel is going to turn into, Maybe that's what's probably going to be the most popular thing. I'm not going to quit reviewing music, and today I'm actually coming at you with my top 10 favorite albums, probably, of all time. And, this list fluctuates from time to time, but these are usually the top 10 that I come back to most times. So a lot of you are here because of Jamie French giving me a shout out, and thank you to her for doing that. But I just wanted to do something a little bit special to thank you guys for being a part of this, and for those of you who have been with me from the beginning, I think you're going to enjoy this. Maybe this will give you a little bit more perspective on me as well. So let's get into it. Let's talk about my top 10 favorite albums of all time. The bottom 5 on this list were going to be honorable mentions at first. I thought I was just going to do a top 5 video, but I thought, well, there's 10, so why not just include those 10? So the first album is by a little piano man named Ben Folds. It's actually Ben Folds 5. The album Whatever and Ever, Amen. This album was really influential on me. Really just a few years ago, I was going through a hard time. My best friend unfortunately committed suicide. And I had this album on repeat, actually, through that whole time. And for whatever reason, it was just weirdly therapeutic. And I just fell in love with the music. And, Ben Folds 5, I'd always known Brick, obviously. But Ben Folds 5, their other music just really touched me in a lot of ways. And it definitely made its way onto the list, for sure. This album has a lot of really melancholy tones to it. It has a lot of funny lines in it. I think there might be a little bit of swearing. I'm not 100% sure. But maybe on the first song. It's not that much if there is. Just wanted to give you a heads up if you try and blast it for the kids. Probably not the best thing to listen to with kids. It's just a really good record. I mean, it's well thought out. The band is super tight. It's only 3 guys. That's something to keep in mind. It's just a super enjoyable record. I mean, if you haven't listened to it, if you have, let me know. And if you do decide to listen to it, also let me know. It's very piano heavy. There's not any guitars in it. It's all piano, bass, and drums. The next album on the list is Chevelle's Wonder What's Next. Now, this album is also really special to me in a different way. I'm still pretty into games, if you can't tell or if you couldn't surmise. I love video games. It's a huge part of my life. I was raised as an only child. So a lot of times, video games were kind of the outlet I went to, and it's a major part of my artistic viewpoint. Nowadays, whenever I am looking at something, it's one of the best art outlets, in my opinion, to express yourself to. This Wonder What's Next album used to be on repeat 24/7. I had a little iPod that I had plugged in at all times, and also I had some speakers that were plugged into it at all times as well, and I would barely turn it up to where it was just barely playing, and like the speakers were in two different parts of my room, so no matter where you were, you could hear the music. And I would come home, I would do my chores, I'd go upstairs, and I would play this record while I was playing whatever game I was playing. This record was always in the background, so I'll be playing a game or doing something, and then for whatever reason, like, this album will pop into my head, which is really weird. I know it's like burned into my mind, but it's a super solid rock album. I mean, it's another 3-piece. It's hard to believe when you listen to this album. It's like, wow, this is 3 guys. This is crazy to me that this amount of sound comes out of 3 guys. And obviously, I mean, there's lots of trickery involved in post. I mean, that we don't have to go into that, but go and listen to any live album or any live performance. Go and listen to any live performance that they've made, though, and I guarantee you'll be blown away. But if you've never really been a big fan of Chevelle or haven't really listened to Chevelle, you gotta listen to this album or at least give it a chance. I love this whole thing except for the last song. Never clicked with me. The next album is Ghost Stories by Coldplay. Now, Coldplay and me have a long history. I had a little Walkman that I used to have. I would put a CD in it, whatever CD my parents would let me take, and borrow, and I would put it in my Walkman and pray to God that it didn't skip on the way to school. I rode my bike to school, and I would put different CDs in there, but for whatever reason, I had a burned copy of Parachutes by Coldplay, and that album never skipped. No matter how hard I pedaled or how hard I ran home, it never skipped while it was in my backpack. So I listened to this album, I had about a half a mile walk, I would say, every day to and from school, and, I listened to a lot of music. I didn't have an iPod until I was like 16 or something like that. This was an album that was pretty influential on me, and it's one of Coldplay's more I don't want to say down-to-earth albums, but it's one of their more raw works, and really identified them kind of as a band, I would say, and really solidified their existence. I mean, Parachutes is the one with yellow on it, but ever since that time I had always paid attention to Coldplay, and around that time I was listening to Parachutes, which was, really old at the time. I believe Parachutes came out in like 2000. It was around 2006 or 2007 that Viva La Vida came out, and I loved that album as well. I thought it was great. It was like a big change for Coldplay, and now we see album after album, they change more and more and more. Ghost Stories was really the first one that really clicked after Viva La Vida for me, where it just felt really emotionally visceral and touched on a lot of feelings that I didn't realize that I even had. And, it was around the time of my parents' divorce that it was released. So, there was probably some, X amount of trauma attached, that I'd buried deep down inside. And Ghost Stories, consequently, is about a divorce between Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow. So I'm sure there was a little bit of resonance there in that respect. But if you've never listened to it, it's a deeply solemn album. It's very beautiful. It's super duper sad. There's a lot of really good songs on it, though, and there's also a lot of there's a few happy songs. There's a lot of hope in this album as well. So if you've never listened to it, if you've never checked it out, I highly recommend. Okay, this next album is a big one for me as well. All of these albums are big ones for me. I don't know why I'm saying each one is specifically big for me. It's weird. For Those Who Have Heart by A Day to Remember. So A Day to Remember, for those of you who don't know, is an American rock band. I joked, ladies and gentlemen, in a previous video about their newest single that they were a metal band. Obviously, they're not metal, but they're an American rock band. And, they definitely have a young sound about them, but this album for me is really kind of what helped me see different sides to the hard rock genre, because it was so relatable, it was so catchy and somewhat popish, but it still hit hard and had all of the feelings or all of the vibes that you might get from a modern metal band or someone who is playing that type of music. They started to get really popular around 2005 and 2006. I'm sure they definitely had a cult following as their rise up to that point. But this album really solidified their existence as well in the modern rock and roll genre. And now today they're one of the biggest heavy hitters in rock music right now. Super duper solid album. If you've never listened to it, highly recommend that you check it out and tell me what you think. The next album on my list is White Pony by Deftones. Now, Deftones, for whatever reason, this album, it's timeless. This album came out almost 20 years ago, but if you listen to it today, you'll be like, okay, yeah, I could see this being kind of a newer type of idea and a newer style of rock music today being used. And you just don't see that much anymore, you know, whenever it comes to modern rock and roll. You don't see a lot of innovation. And I feel there's just something about Deftones, the combination of Chino's voice, the production, the instruments, I mean, just the whole overall vibe. There's nobody out there that's like Deftones. I mean, that you could say there's a couple of bordering genres. It's like Deftones is its own genre within itself. I will say that their album, Koi no Yokan, is probably better mixed. But as far as, you know, song remembering, like remembering overall, like, bangers off of an album, and, like, the whole album in general, White Pony 100% is probably their best one. I'm actually wearing the shirt, too. Look at that. Deftones, baby. He does kind of have a somewhat whininess to his voice, but there's nobody out there that sounds like Chino. Another one. These last few ones have been rockish. I mean, they've been pretty rocky. You know what I mean? I take music very seriously, though. Okay. So these next five, you could interchange them. You know, there is no, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like, the best one or anything. You could literally take any of these albums and, you know, well, maybe not all of them, but definitely the top three. The top three you can exchange in any fashion. They all are tied for me. But these are the top 5 that probably make the most sense to me and have spoke to me the most over the course of my 24 years of existence. You know what I mean? Okay, so at the bottom of this list is 808s and Heartbreak. And this is actually probably the only one that I couldn't interchange with all 5. So definitely, so the top 4 probably are the ones that you could interchange at all, you know, in any way. 808s and Heartbreaks by Kanye West. This album is incredibly innovative. Say what you want about Kanye West. Say what you want about, you know, his actions and his mental health, his stability, whatever. I mean, obviously you saw my reaction to the newest Closed on Sunday video. I think he's lost his freaking mind. But this is before all of that. This is, you know, basically around the time his mom died. I think this album is actually a reaction to his mom dying. There's no swearing on this album. It's a rap album. It's Kanye West. It's not rap, it's hip hop, I guess. It's crazy to me that the dude produced this himself. Obviously, he had influences, you know, helping him. He produced this himself, though. He said, I have this idea, and I'm going to lay this down. The first song on the album is like 7 minutes long. The outro is like literally just 2 minutes of the same beat. If you've never listened to it, I highly recommend it. Each time I listen to this album, I'm like, how can you hate this guy? Like, he's talented. Say what you want about how he is, but I mean, he's a talented person. There are plenty of people in the music industry that are super duper talented that nobody wants to be around. I mean, look at the Eagles, look at Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. I mean, there is all kinds of big names that have happened through the decades. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, they may be crazy, they may be having whatever, a hard time, and they may be hard to be around, but it doesn't change the fact that they're super talented. So don't sleep on 808s and Heartbreaks. It's a super duper good album. Now we get to the big 4. These are a big deal, people. All right, these are the ones. These are the right in the heart maker things. These are the hit me right in the feels albums. Nostalgic, iconic, and deeply personal. We have an album I've already reviewed before on the channel. I'll put it up right here in a tag so you can watch it if you haven't. 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance. This album is absolutely the definition of theatric emo. music. I mean, at the time you could say it was just alternative rock and roll with a little bit of hint of emo in it. I personally think that the views expressed in this music, the emotion expressed in this music, the look of this band, the vibe you get when you listen to it is emo. Do we classify The Cure as emo music? My wife sure does. She says it's like OG emo music. I have to agree with her. These guys are the godfathers of modern emo music. Thank God they've actually returned. Hope they put out a new album. I think it's about freaking time. But this is one of those albums where I'd come home from school and literally take as long as I possibly could to wash all the dishes because I wanted to get through each song. And I absolutely love this album. I listened to it a bunch as a kid, a lot as a kid, and still to this day I revisit it often so that I can reminisce on my childhood while still enjoying, you know, the effects that modern music have definitely taken from this band, because there's plenty of bands out there that really freaking wish they would have been My Chemical Romance. You know, my dad said something to me a long time ago. I'll never forget this because this is my favorite band. And he looked at me one day and he said, "Son, it's one of those things where nobody's gonna remember My Chemical Romance in 10 years. Boy, was he freaking wrong." The next album on this list is so important to me because this is really the introduction to, you know, hard rock music for me. You know, this is the introduction. This is what would have, I don't think I would have ever enjoyed Deftones, A Day to Remember, or any of the other hard rock / metal music that I enjoy today without this band or album. And that is Linkin Park's Meteora. This album means so much to so many people because of the lyrics alone. Not to mention, you know, it perfectly blended what the first album, Hybrid Theory, sought out to do, which was blending a rap vibe with rock music. I mean, it was literally one of the first fusions of that genre you would have ever seen. And I feel like, you know, a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, 21 Pilots." Here's the deal. 21 Pilots, super duper talented. I liked them better the first time when they were called Linkin Park. It's just a fact of the matter. All it is the new generation's Linkin Park. And that's okay. You know, it's okay to say that. Don't at me and say that 21 Pilots is super duper unique. All they're doing is modernizing what Linkin Park did like 12 years ago. This album's full of huge, bombastic, simplistic styles and beats and just really showcases the talent. There's not a ton of intricate music work being done on this album. It's mostly, you know, heavy hitting distortion and gain over, you know, fast rapping or screaming with a catchy drum beat. And each song is diverse enough while still keeping the overall aesthetic and vibe through the entire album that it's hard not to want to just repeat this album as soon as you listen to it again. This is another one of those albums where I'd come home and I'd scream at the top of my lungs because no one was home yet. And I'd be like, God, how does Chester Bennington do that? Didn't know his name at the time. But now I still think about coming home, trying to scream my lungs out to faint, and just not even being able to do it any justice whatsoever. Super duper solid album. Check it out. These next two albums are pretty much what's responsible for me taking an interest in wanting to become a musician. And, you know, I think both of these bands really helped me understand that I was a drummer before anything. And the next album on this list is Songs for the Deaf by Queens of the Stone Age. There's a groove and such an ambience and haunting feeling that Queens of the Stone Age music has, and I've always loved it ever since I was a kid. I mean, Josh Homme's voice is so incredibly awesome. If you saw my review of Desert Sessions and you listen to Desert Sessions, you gotta listen to this album, because all of those feelings that you felt on Desert Sessions, you're gonna feel on this album. And they had a couple of hits. You know, there's a couple of singles off of this album that made it to the Billboard. I think No One Knows was nominated for a Grammy at one point for Best Music Video or Best Rock Song or something like that. And I get super duper excited every single time Queens of the Stone Age put out a record, because even though it's gonna sound completely different than the last one, it's still gonna have the overall vibe that the one before it had. And there's just no denying the talent of this band and just the iconic impact that they have had on modern alternative music, rock and roll music. I mean, the whole desert music scene. It's all because of Queens of the Stone Age. I mean, they're the ones who are basically part of the founding group who did that. So if you've never listened to Songs for the Deaf and you liked Desert Sessions, definitely listen to that album. And now we come to number one. Okay, so I was in a band playing guitar, super duper unhappy, you know, with what I was doing. I was the youngest guy in the band. I wasn't really great at guitar, and but I enjoyed playing, and I enjoyed being in the band. And I was, you know, playing one day, and I think the band was always pretty unhappy overall because everyone felt like they should be doing other things, you know, like my dad felt like he should be playing the guitar, you know, the rhythm guitar, but he was playing bass. He also thought he should have been the singer. The singer wanted to be doing something else. I really didn't want to be playing guitar. I just wanted to be in a band. So one day, for whatever reason, our drummer doesn't show up. We had a super simple song by a local band at the time that we were covering, and they sat me down and they said, you know, we sat down and like, okay, well, where's the drummer? And they're like, well, he can't make it today. And I just kind of spoke up. I was like, I'll do it. You know, I'll try it out. Why not? And I sat down and I kind of got it, and I really enjoyed it. I just kind of took to it. I'd always really wanted to learn how to play the drums. I just didn't ever really know where to start with that. So long story short, basically at the end of the day, a few months later, we're leaving that band. Me, the guitar player, and my dad are leaving that band to form a new band, and I was going to be the drummer. So I don't know, for whatever reason, Foo Fighters' song Rope got super duper popular, and I really, really liked it. And then I just all of a sudden became super duper obsessed with their music. I loved everything that they had. The vibe that you got from the music, the lyrics, just the overall message that most of the music had. It just made me feel good. I would come home and play this album on the drums in its entirety just because I wanted to better myself, and I still think Dave Grohl is one of the best drummers of all time. Fun fact for you, he actually recorded all the drums on that record, sang, and played the guitar. So he's a pretty talented dude. But I always thought, you know, when I was playing the drums, I was like, I gotta be like Dave Grohl. So I didn't have long hair, but I would study him. I would watch him on my computer, and I would watch any live footage I could find of him playing the drums, and I would try and emulate that because there's nobody else like that has that vibe to it. These songs are drilled in my head. They're kind of in another way, kind of like the Chevelle album, and they're just there. And I think that this album will probably be my favorite album of all time. I mean, you have Hey Johnny Park, My Hero, Everlong, Monkey Wrench. I mean, you have all these huge rock hits that came off of this album that so many bands have taken inspiration from. So it's a really, really great album. If you've never listened to it, or you're just kind of like, oh, Foo Fighters are dad rock. It is dad rock, but it's good, the good kind. I mean, this album came out, you know, the year I was born, or I think. No, I was born after this, actually. I think it came out in 96, like a year or two later. But still, I mean, this album has aged like a fine wine. So if you've never listened to it, you absolutely have to. Not an option. Have to listen to it. Well, we come to that time at the end of this video, and, you know, I'm sorry it ran a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but at the same time, you know, I really wanted to give you guys kind of a little bit more personal look at me and my music taste. And, you know, maybe things will make more sense now. Anytime I review an album, you can look back at this video or you know, look back at the list and say, oh, well, that makes sense that he might not like this thing, or that he would like this thing because of this thing he said here, or this thing that he likes here. And, you know, it is what it is. Music is so personal, and at the end of the day, just because I don't like something or I do like something doesn't mean it's good or bad. I think a lot of the music that comes out today, especially a lot of the rap music, is trash. I don't like it. It makes people ask the wrong questions, and it encourages lifestyles that are not becoming. It's degenerative. And I don't like it. But that doesn't mean that it's bad necessarily. I just don't particularly care for it. That's why there's not a ton of rap music on here on this list. Or country music. I'm just now kind of getting into the whole country phase. So there's that. A folk album almost made it on this list. Didn't quite make the cut. But, you know, it is what it is. The real thing, though, is, you know, I wanted to do something special for reaching 100 subscribers. And I definitely have more that I want to say. But that's the reason why this is so long, is I just wanted you to get to know me a little bit better and kind of give you something special, quote unquote, to watch, just because I'm super duper excited that I hit my goal. And thank you again to Jamie French for giving me that shout out. So what are your top 10, top 5, top 5 to 10 favorite albums? I definitely want to know. I want to know what your favorite music is. I mean, the people who are following me and the people who are subscribed to me, I mean, I don't really know what your music tastes are, so why don't you let me know in the comments below? I'd love to kind of go back and forth with you on that. As always, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. I really think that, I want to do this for a living. I want to talk about things that I love, to a certain degree, and to be able to post it for people to watch. I've always loved entertaining, and I love music, and I love being with my wife, and if people find that entertaining, then, we'll see what happens. But let's set a new goal this year. If you're still watching by this point, let's set a new goal. By this time next year, let's try and have 500 subscribers. 500 subscribers. We'll see where we're at. And, if we don't hit it, that's okay. It's just good to have a realistic goal. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you for subscribing. Thank you to all my new subscribers who are checking this out. And I hope to hear from you soon. Also, as always, thank you for preparing yourself for a plethora of hot takes and potentially unpopular opinions. I'm Gabriel Fast. I will always be the wannabe critic.